when your door goes at 1 minute to midnight in Glasgow. Here we go. There it is, that noise. It means only one thing. Yes, indeed. That means it's Friday again. We're back and we are live. The dream team is in the building. The three amigos, yes, he's back from his Thanksgiving indulgence. Yes, not a blue chicken in sight. Lots of turkey, all the trimmings, all the good stuff. He's here. He's Scotty Lopez. Man, it's good to see you back, Scotty boy.
Hey, it's good to be back, and I hope everybody out there had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And I hope you got stuffed and fell into a turkey coma like I did. That L-tryptophan that is contained within that succulent meat tends to make one a little sleepy. And then you add on top of that a little PPP, and boy, that is a excellent Thanksgiving for everyone.
That's a powerful combination right there, Scott Lopez. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm telling you. And of course, it's not just two amigos. We have found a straggler out there in the digital green room. He was kicking around. He has nothing better to do, so he thought he'd come and hang out with us, pair of clowns. So it's Kevin. It's Nacy. He's back again. How you doing, bro?
I am doing as fantastic as the universe will allow. Again, with my two friends from Kansas to Scotland.
It's becoming a bit of a regular fixture, this. I think I'm going to have to redo the graphics and take the Usual Suspects movie, you know, Kaiser Sose and all the rest of that jazz, because we are the usual suspects, right? Same old faces, Friday after Friday. But the audience likes that familiarity. The brain likes a pattern like that, right? It can recognize when it's a Friday.
Hey, you know, it's like the old, remember the same bat time, same bat channel, you know, from back in the day. And yeah.
Yep. Now, when we come back after the Wookiee call, yes, the call of the Wookiee is coming up soon.
Excuse me, it's man.
Well, whether you're a man, they, them, it, those, or otherwise, head on over to tfrlive.com/chat, because we're dead woke and we are dead inclusive around here. I'll give anyone, absolutely anyone, a shout out. Even a robot by the name of Sophia. There's a rumor that there might even be interdimensional time travelers in there, but I haven't confirmed it yet. Wasn't on any reputable site that I've looked at. But hey, if you want to head on over there, now is the time. So Scotty, before I head on over there, are you looking forward to embarking? It's like embarking on another mission into the unknown, isn't it?
Yeah, like since I was missing in action last week, a lot has taken place. All of the Monolith stuff, and we kind of touched upon it a little bit yesterday on the KBS show, but we can get more into it. And we've got a lot of astrological things on the horizon that are about to take place that it's quite interesting. the great conjunction, Kev.
No, or as my good friend Mary Dacina, our resident zodiac person. She comes on once a month now, but she had a great name for it, Scott. You ready? The Great Mutation. Oh.
The Great Mutation.
Yeah, because of all these cycles that are all coming together at this time and the change that we're going through right now. As above, so below. In the heavens, these things are all changing. These cycles are moving, Scotty boy. Wheels within wheels, squares within circles. Yes, indeed.
You know, it just goes to show that there was so much craziness going on this year in 2020, right? Like, and then you add on top of that, like all of these celestial events, and just it just seems like 2020 is this focal point for like everything happening all at the same time.
You're right, dude. You're right. I'm telling you, and it's only going to get crazier around the corner in 2021. But when we come back from the Wookiee cave and the shout out, I'm going to come to Kevin first and some personal woo. Oh, turn down the lights, folks. This is going to get pretty creepy very, very early. So before we get there, let me head on over. And like I say, I wasn't lying. I even give bots a shout out. Sophia, good to see you again. Hardcore Sophia. Very rarely is there a show goes by without Sophia in there, Scott.
Sophia is completely dedicated. I've never seen Sophia leave the chat.
It's awesome, isn't it? The machine learning that must be taking place with that constant flow of data coming from over 30 banging shows, you know?
I love how Sophia's avatar is the HAL 9000.
It's awesome, isn't it? Especially with all the monoliths flying around right now. Ooh. So we have got Bam, Cold Brews, Onslow, Psycho Dave, Rebecca, good to see you, Boy Solomon, Waffle Buddy, the Paradoxical Anomaly. I almost got that wrong there. That would have been really terrible. Gemini. I'm a Cancer, by the way. Joseph Skynet, Vlash, the Hacker. Oh boy. Firewalls up, the hackers in. Usually don't have to worry about the ones that call themselves hackers, but so we're alright, I think. Don't like judo, kind of like mind trick me here, right? Don't do that to me, folks.
Okay.
Don't do it. Confident self, that's what I like to hear. You should always be confident about yourself. So with that said, enough of me waffling on. Will we go to Kev first, Scott? Because he was sharing something before we came on air that I tried not to actually listen to because I want to get it raw or not at all.
Yeah, that was a little bit of some. Well, I mean, it's what Naysay always does to us. He just casually drops some like big woo, just either right before the show or whatever, and it's like, whoa, hold on, we got to back up and get into that. That was a little bit crazy there, my friend. So.
Like taking a 1-2 off Deontay Wilder for a warm up, you know?
Yeah,
gets you going, man. So Kev, tell us, man, talk to the audience, and great to have you along here again today. But are you attracting woo to yourself the more you come on here and talk woo with us boys?
Well, sometimes I ponder if it's like that that metaphor of like if you go to buy a red car and then all of a sudden you start seeing red cars all the time. But it could possibly be once you know of something, then you're able to recognize it more and more. But what occurred to me, if the audience listened last week, we were talking about, entities and how do you have discernment of whether or not they're positive or negative or even neutral. And I went to bed rather late, and so I was sleeping in. And shortly, I would say, I think it was a little bit around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, as I'm tilting back in my chair, all of a sudden I hear, or I think I hear, I'm still pondering, was I in sleep or not in sleep? Because it's that moment between the two where possibly we are able to channel or tap into that veil or go through the veil. but I start hearing whispering in my ear, to the point of where I remember saying out loud to stop bothering me. I'm exhausted. I need to get some sleep. And it wouldn't stop. And then when it gets to the point of this, I start utilizing my Anishinaabe words. And so I asked for this entity to mahjong or leave. And I use some more, phrases. And the next thing you know, this entity went from like a English to Anishinaabe, and it felt like I was being chastised, and it was speaking so quickly I couldn't figure out what was being said to me. But the feeling I got was like, how dare you talk to me in our language, and just started going off on me. And then I apologized, and I asked politely, please, I'm trying to sleep, can you contact me later? And then it did stop. And after waking up later in the afternoon, it did concern me enough that I called my elder and I shared the experience with them, and said, hey, do you have any suggestions? Because we do this with each other, and I strongly suggest this with other people too, that if you have a network where you have individuals or entities that you trust, share with them your experiences and attempt to look at it from a different perspective. Because I believe that once you notice these things from multitudes of perspectives, then you can make a better choice of action for your future. And this is as... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that makes sense, because you might have a certain, like you said, a certain perspective on what's going on or what's happening, but maybe you can get the input from other people or other things and determine that maybe what's happening might not be malevolent, or the other way around, I agree with you, because if you're the one experiencing it, then you're going to have kind of a... I don't know. Your mind is running wild, and you're probably more prone to jump to conclusions than, say, kind of stepping back and kind of taking in what's going on and getting other people's perspective on it. So no, I agree with you there. Yeah.
But I was happy enough with the conversation, and I didn't feel threatened at all, but it did raise my woo meter for the experience. And so, especially because when we were talking about it, and even like listening to some of, Warrior Mode, and, and just my own experiences of entities where you think they are positive, generalizing, of course. But then as you share more experiences with entities, you find out, hey, this just might not be the best type of energy that I need in my universe at this time. And so it's better, because you can always love somebody from afar. You don't have to have them right there immediately within your circle.
That time when you're just in between being awake and being asleep. Now, I'm not saying this is the case with you, Kevin, but in general, I'll ask the both of you. Do you think that's a time that we're more susceptible to something coming in, us going somewhere else? And at the same time, is that state of consciousness between being awake and being asleep, could we be creating that in ourselves, almost like a dream state?
Well, that sort of area between sleep and awake, that's kind of the target mode that people who try to practice lucid dreaming, that's what you're aiming for, is kind of that midway zone between the two. And I've had many experiences in that sort of that in between realm, because I have insomnia and it's very hard for me to go to sleep anyways. And when I do manage to somewhat fall asleep, I'm mostly in that kind of halfway zone. I just believe, though, I believe that it does kind of open you up more to kind of crossing the veil, I guess you could say, or kind of tapping into that other realm. And I've always been of the belief that when you're dreaming, you're actually traversing like the multiverse. You're experiencing alternate realities that you're not experiencing when you're awake, because you're grounded in this dimension or realm or whatever. But when you're asleep, you're essentially tapping into these kind of parallel dimensions and parallel realities where even bizarre stuff can happen. Like the laws of physics in our universe don't necessarily have to apply to the laws of physics in another universe, right? So that's why maybe in your dream you're able to fly. Maybe the effects of gravity or physics are completely different in that alternate reality, in that parallel universe or whatever. Or maybe you're experiencing things that like alternate histories, right? Or just these switch ups where and I think when you're in that in between sleep and awake, I think you're able to somewhat, I guess if you're into the lucid dreaming thing and you practice it a lot, you're able to hone it and control it a little bit more. I found that when I'm in that in between state, that it seems like I have more control over what's happening as opposed to just this chaos of whatever, writing out whatever is happening in the dream with no control whatsoever. When you're in that in between state, you seem to have a little more control. So it does make you wonder. But no, I definitely think that's the case. I think when you're in that state, you're definitely open. you're open and more susceptible to going places, or like you said, maybe things coming in, and contacting you and doing stuff like that. So
well, I would imagine if we can go outwards to other locations, perhaps other dimensions, then I mean, the logic for me is other things could come this way as well. But it's that in between, that state that your brain really needs to get in to be able to achieve these things that it's capable of doing all the time, only there's too much chatter in there, too much noise. I know me personally, when it comes to meditation and stuff like that, it's useless. They tell you just to clear your mind. I'm out the game as soon as they tell you to clear your mind. I've got a voice inside me questioning why they're telling you to clear your mind, and another voice answers back. And if they tell you to picture a blank piece of paper, I'm looking at the blank piece of paper. I'm telling myself, now, Kevin, you're looking at this. It doesn't stop. It never stops, right? But it's that.
Oh, it's the same.
Yeah,
it's the same.
It's that. It's that quantum kind of state thing. That's where I think the brain's needing to go. And you got the lucid dreaming, you've got that, but you've also got remote viewing as well, which is more of a, dare I say, conscious
astral projection.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? Because you're very conscious when you're doing it. You're not in a hypnotized state, or you're not going to sleep. But all of these things are kind of clues into that bigger multiverse type thing that's all around us all the time. Only our noggins aren't able to tune into it.
Mhm.
Well, one thing that I experienced is when I was actively doing lucid dreaming, that I would wake up exhausted. Where if I just naturally went to bed and just tried to go through the whole experience of resting the body, then I felt like I got enough sleep. But one of the things when it came to meditation, one thing that I've learned, and researching the Vedas and all of these ancient India texts, where they discuss how meditation isn't about blanking the slate or clearing the mind. It's about focusing the mind on the challenge that you're trying to overcome. And so then when you utilize these tools, like my ancestors, they talk about the dream state being more of a reality than our awake state. But then they also will say sometimes a dream is just a dream, but it's up to us with our interpretation of how can this dream help us move forward in a positive way. So it's absolutely essential that we use that critical thinking, because I want to believe. And sometimes because of that strong want of believing something is a certain way, we tend to get wrapped up in that perspective. And so when we are at that state of in between, absolutely, especially if you look at the inner workings of the pineal gland and how incredible it is basically a portal, a matrix, an opening. And an opening is not there with a one-way sign. So this is where it is, I would say, detrimental on each individual to make an assessment of, am I currently in the right state of being to dip my toe into attempting to open these portals?
Exactly. That's a very good point that you just made. And they say, I think people have to treat this with respect, just like anything else. Like if you're going to engage in lucid dreaming or meditation or any of these practices that opens up your mind, you've got to be in the right state of mind when you do it. Just like you have to be in the right state of mind if you're going to attempt to do any kind of psychonauting, right? Psychedelic experiences, right? You can't go in with a lot of negative vibes and your headspace in the wrong place when you engage in any of this stuff, because you're not going to have a good time, and you might actually channel something, or something might attach to you that is negative because you're not in that proper mind state. You're not in that right headspace. And so I just think anytime anybody engages in any of this stuff, you really got to make sure that you're in a good spot, at least mentally, before you engage in any of this. So yeah, good point.
I've got a story here, and we'll get a couple of these before the break, but many people have the ability to lucid dream, and they've experienced some truly wild things. So I'm not sure what this is going to throw up, but it says all sorts of strange phenomena happen while you sleep. And one of the most intense and fascinating things that can occur is lucid dreaming. Some people actually know they're dreaming as it unfolds, making the vivid, rapid eye movement cycle all the more captivating. Now, since this type of dreaming offers authentic fantasies with some level of control, we'll soon be able to buy that off Amazon and Google, folks. It'll just be a chip away. That's only joking. And one of the most, many people attempt to teach themselves how to lucid dream. Naturally, this leads to all sorts of hilarious, bizarre lucid dreams that people love to share on sites like Reddit. So we'll get this first one in before we go to the break. A terror in 2 parts. It was actually a 2-parter, 3 if you count the dream within a dream, when I was 12. It wasn't even scary as a dream, more because of the implication. Night 1. Started out normal enough. I was walking through the desert, and out of nowhere my mother showed up, desperate to tell me something. I listened, and she begged me to wake up. This is a dream. Please open your eyes and wake up. So I did. I was confused when I actually woke up and went back to sleep. Don't remember other dreams that night. Night 2. Same premise. I was walking through the desert, but no mother to be seen. I then remembered what she told me. If you're in a dream desert, then wake up. I opened my eyes and woke up in a medieval prison, guarded by some sort of monsters. Naturally, I was scared, but the people in that prison were terrified, telling me this wasn't supposed to happen and that I should please go back to sleep and wake up in my room. And it took a while for me to get to sleep, being in a prison and all. And the longer it took, the more terrified they became. Eventually I went to sleep and I woke up in my room, but I still wonder if that dream was trying to tell me something. Now, we had, I done a show with Jason at the weekend where he got transgressed or regressed, and he was seeing through the eyes of somebody in 1742. Oh, dude, it was like, wow, the video is so powerful. You can see that over on his channel, First Paranormal. But this kind of thing here, I mean, when you dream of something like the medieval times, is that really something that's just been concocted in our mind? Or are we reliving either something we've been a part of in a past life, or are we seeing through somebody else's eyes in a different time? We'll be back after the break. Don't go anywhere. There we go. I had to take my time there because sometimes I inadvertently hang up on. For some reason, it's always Megaphone Man, and it looks nothing like TFR.
I saw the mouse heading that way, and I was like, "Don't do it, Camp! Don't do it! Don't do it!" And I saw it jump up real quick, and I'm like, he caught himself. Whew.
This is a good topic to get us going, boys. Yeah,
this is a good topic. This is one of the topics that really, really fascinates me. Yeah, I've always liked the whole subject of like dreaming and what does it mean and what is actually going on, and
what does it mean when you're the one I get all the time, man. It's like I need to go and run, or I need to speed up to do something, and it's like, I can't even, it's like my muscles are all, I can't move my feet.
I get that kind of a lot too. In some of my
it's like
dreams.
that pure exhausted way, even if you move a bit. It's like I just can't keep going.
You're trying to do something, and it's like something is holding you back, like you're in
mud. Mud, glue. It's like walking through quicksand or something, man.
What the heck is up with that?
The popular. I say popular. It's a common dream.
I also wonder if people who have like, let me see, how would I describe it? Like me and you have a lot of synchronicities. Like there's a lot of the same cylinders, I guess you could say.
Oh, big thing.
I wonder if like people that have a lot of similarities like that experience the same type of dreams, or whatever. Because I experience that quite often as well, where it like there's this goal or something I'm trying to achieve in the dream, and I'm trying to do something.
Or another one is if I'm having to fight somebody. And I mean, I could fight back in the day when I was like in the army and that, but it's like you go to swing a punch and it just won't even go. It's like, oh my god, man, what is happening here? Not good.
I'm constantly feeling like I'm battling demons in my sleep.
Jimmy Jeans, I will add Jimmy, and Jimmy's lurking about in the chat room.
Oh boy, the Gymster.
The Gymster.
Well, I would be interested in Scotty, if we compared dreams, because being in a wheelchair, I rarely ever have a dream where I'm in a wheelchair.
Yep, same here. Nope, I'm with you on that. No, very very interesting. And the thing is that I've been in a wheelchair my entire life, right? So I've never.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was born with AMC and conditions. So I've never even really experienced walking and all that. I mean, I did on braces until I was like 5, but
so very minimal.
Very very minimal. But when I dream, I'm like.
Are you watching the clock, Kev?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're good. No, I can get to it when we get back. It's an interesting point you brought up. So
here we go.
Come on, man.
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
How dare you?
There we go. A bit of a star-studded lineup to bring us back from the break there. We're back, part 2 of today's Freaky Friday, right here on TFRlive.com. I have got Scotty Lopez here in the house. We've got Nace in the house. And coming up as well now, added into the mix, it's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Yes, it is. Because Jimmy Jeans is in the house. Jimmy, how you doing, man?
Jimmy G.
Yeehaw!
It's the sarcophagi.
Sarcophagi. We're about to ride forth into the unknown. What's up, Scotty? What's up, Nace? What's up, television?
Look. Jimmy, he's not just a guy. He's a sarcophagi.
He is the sarcophagi guy.
Hey, it was funny too. When I told you I was the token American, I was thinking like token, but somebody else wrote Tokin.
Oh, I like it. That is far better. Yeah, I like that. Yep. So what you been up to, Jim? Are you looking forward to sharing your best freakiness, man? We love it when you get freaky with us, Jimmy.
Yeah, man, I love coming out and visiting you guys. There's no place I'd rather be on a Friday afternoon than right
come
here,
on, there's
right
plenty
now.
places we would all rather be, Jimmy, like the Great Pyramid in Egypt, for one. I mean, as much as I love the audience here, if somebody said to me, Kev, Freaky Friday one hand, trip to Egypt in the other, but to heck with a lot of you, I'm going to Egypt for the week.
Well, we can go. That's the beauty of the Kev Baker Show, is we can jump into the quantum chronovisor and beam ourselves anywhere we want to in the whole entire universe. And with you guys at the helm, there's no telling where we may end up. So I'm super stoked. And I haven't seen Scotty in such a while. It's good to see you, bro. It's good to hear you. I miss you.
Man.
Yeah, man.
Well, Jimmy, we're talking lucid dreaming. What's your take on that shenanigans?
I don't know. I just keep wishing I was going to wake up and the sun's yellow and everything's mellow. I wish I was dreaming right now, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? For me, a lot of times I've had dreaming's a weird thing for me, because I don't dream specifically. Like, I don't have like bad dreams or this or that type of thing.
Do you have that dream I was describing where you're like stuck in treacle, or you're going to fight somebody and your arm won't move? It's like, oh, you ever have that?
No, but I have had a dream once where I was fighting somebody, and I felt that it was actually a spiritual battle that I had with somebody on another plane. These were 2 people that I was really good friends with. They were into magic. We all went our separate ways. But I always still felt haunted by, there's just something there, something there. So anyway, one night I had this dream, and I dreamed that I was driving my car. I was in the desert. I stopped at a gas station to get gas. And these 2 other characters that I'm talking about showed up, and they had broadswords, kind of like the Conan type sword.
Nice,
and so we all,
man.
Yeah, we all ended up getting in this sword battle. And so I fought against those two. I killed both of them. I decapitated both of them. And I was walking away victorious down this road, and I was dragging my sword behind me. And all of a sudden, like my back was hurting, and I reached my hand back to my back, and I could feel my spine.
I don't know if he's like the Highlander, or if he's like.
About to say, I mean, if that dream to
listen to this. I felt the bones of my spine on my hand, and I looked back, and I saw this big chunk of my meat, like all my muscles and my meat was laying on the ground.
Dude, okay, right, cool. Dang, dude.
So like somebody hit me, so I went and I laid down on the meat that was on the road, and it went back onto me. It went back on, and I was healed up, man.
You're bad meat, dude. You're bad meat. Did you wake up with a scar?
I do have a scar, but it's not from that.
You should have just lied and said it was. What a story that would have been.
So the thing is what happens on the astral plane? I mean, does it, is that just as much of a real life as the one we're living here and now, because we kind of experience it a little bit. I mean, Scotty, you were talking about how things render,
we've got super chat.
All right.
The Matrix is haunting me tonight. I have been invisible in the chat.
Becky, you're never invisible to us. Thank you very, 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 very much. Kevin, you'll be able to speak to this probably more, but you've been following the shows recently. We've had Mary Dacina on. We've had Malaya on. We've had Luna, Donnie, Jess on. We've had you on. A lot of talk keeps going back to this astral plane. Is the soul the same as our consciousness? So there's a question. When we go out here, Scotty, Kevin, Jimmy, when we're going out into the astral plane, is that our consciousness or is that our soul? Or is it the same thing?
I think same thing.
What Jimmy, to add a little bit to what Jimmy was just saying, the question would be, what happens in the astral plane, does it stay in the astral plane, or do we bring it back with us? Because I guess we could all agree that we are metaphorically someplace else than where we are when we're awake. Where that could be, we can only speculate and assume. We find all of this research about the whole dream state and what is occurring when we're in the dream state, because our incredible bodies will release, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a paralyzing agent. So when we're having these dreams of battling and fighting and that, we're not literally thrashing about. However, even though all of that I don't know what it's called, whatever that is that's keeping us from moving our body, it still is not enough to stop the regeneration process of men and women having night ejaculations. So even life cannot be stopped in the dream state. So
and look at the issues people have where they don't have the paralyzing agent kick in on their brain, and they end up like punching somebody in the bed or thrashing around and having these violent kind of nightmare situations where it's kind of the same thing like when you see your dog dreaming and he's moving his paws, acting like he's running.
Watched anyone dreaming on Chantix or Champix, whichever name you want to give it? But that's like watching somebody going through a lucid living sleeping hell.
I think there's something in that medication that definitely
unhinges you. It uncouples you from this reality, dude.
it definitely like opens you up, but probably not in a good way, since it's kind of this artificial,
I think
way
the way it works is
and,
it decouples you from the personality that used to smoke, and it creates a whole Russian kind of doll effect of multiple personalities, that many of which do smoke, many of which don't. But by the time you come out the other end of a course of Chantix, you are not the same person. For better or worse, it changes you.
Yeah. Now, I want to get into something that Naysay brought up during the break, and because me and him are both in a wheelchair, we're both disabled, and I know that Naysay was once able to walk and was fully, had full mobility. But I've always been in a wheelchair. I was born with arthrogryposis, and so I was just I've never been able to walk or have a mobility or anything like that. I was able to walk on braces and crutches until I was like 5, but my condition just continued to kind of deteriorate from there, and I just ended up just being in a wheelchair from that point on. But the interesting thing is that, like, when I dream, I'm fully mobile. I can walk and I can move my hands and all of that. And for somebody that has like never experienced that, right? How is it that like my brain automatically knows like how to move my muscles and like how to walk and all of that? It just seems extremely natural, right? Like, so I always found that very interesting. And when I dream, I'm never dreaming of myself in the wheelchair. I'm always like fully functional, which is quite interesting. And that was something that Naysay had brought up during the break, is that when he dreams, he's not dreaming of himself in the wheelchair.
There's see sometimes when you get people waking up after a coma, Scott, and they've had a head injury, maybe something like that, but they'll, on occasion, not saying it's common, but sometimes you'll get an English guy, an American guy, he'll wake up and the first thing he does is break into fluent Spanish. That never spoke a language before in their life, never done anything. And I've always thought about that, and I've always wondered if, and this might sound crazy, but whether our brains can contain the information for everything. It's just locked away in there. Maybe we access it remotely through the conscious cloud, but everything's in there. And I know it sounds really weird, and there's nothing medical to go on here, but that's the one thing I keep coming back to when I think of those coma people that wake up and they can do that. Yeah. A full language downloaded into your head, or was it already in there?
Well, and here's another thing. I mean, what if we're not necessarily traversing like the multiverse or a parallel reality, but what if we're just what if we're essentially just tapping into like the Akashic record or the ether, and we're just receiving random information downloads into our brain? And that's why a lot of dreams seem so chaotic, right?
We're not tuning in right. We're decoding it wrong.
But it does make you wonder, because how is it that the brain can render people's faces and buildings and locations and extremely like literally lifelike things that you've of like faces of people you've never seen before, right? Like you're having a dream and you see a strange guy or a woman that you've never seen in your life. Well, how does your brain know how to render that? Especially if you're a person, let's just say you're a person that's not even artistically creative. You can't even draw a stick figure very well, right? There are some people like that haven't, that they're just not, they can't, they don't have that kind of creative spark, but yet their dreams, their brains are all of a sudden rendering, lifelike scenarios out of nowhere. Where does that come from? Where does that come from? If you have no information to base any of this off of, or a reference of any point, then how is your mind doing that? That suggests to me that you're experiencing something else. You're taking in information from somewhere else, and that's what you're experiencing. So yeah, I mean, it's just the rabbit hole when it comes to all of this dream stuff.
It's a pathway, Scott, a neural pathway. Lots of twisting neural pathways to the woo.
Going back to the thing about dreaming and being able to walk in my dreams and all of that stuff, I would say that has something to do with your soul and your consciousness being completely separate from the meat suit that you're located in at any given moment, right? The meat suit might be broken, like in my case, but the soul and the consciousness or whatever, it's not. And
this all resonates with me. Dream state reality, it is all the same sometimes. Space-time. Real-time.
Exactly. You can't separate any of it. And people sometimes take it the wrong way when I compare reality to simulation. I don't mean to belittle any of your real life problems that are very real. Not much of a game some days when the world gets really real. I appreciate that. However, to kind of go along with what Scott said there, guys, I mean, me and Scott play Call of Duty on occasion. You start off and Scott's got his guy there and he's all tooled up, ready to go, and my guy drops in, you can dress him up and you can do this and that. And for me, that's no different to what we are here. We're the little guys that are dropped into this reality. But outside of that, call it the higher consciousness, call it the higher self, there's something else in control, even when we don't think there is. We really like to, it's more comfortable to think that, free will and we're the ones making all the choices, But really, how much of that is coming not out with you, but it's still you, only a different part of you, like the player in the game, Scott. And that's why, the more that we create these simulations that are getting better and better and better all the time, you get closer and closer and closer to just throwing your hands up and realizing there is something simulated about all of this.
Yeah, and I think, when we talk simulation and stuff, a lot of the people of kind of a more religious sort of background, they tend to back off from that, and they're like, oh, I don't know about it. But I don't see it. There's not a conflict between simulation theory and religion, Christianity or anything like that, because somebody had to create the simulation, right? And so
it was the Buddha. The Buddha done it, man. The Buddha done it. You could tell he was sitting munching all day long. Look at the belly he had on him, man. He looks like a gamer.
But no, I mean, it shows that there's a creator, a grand architect, that there's an intelligent design behind everything. Let there be light. That could be light coming through the fiber optic cable that flips on in the simulation server. I mean, whatever. I mean, you can use all of those.
Is many other simulations running at once. We don't run one simulation. We run as many as we can as the computing power allows for, right?
But going to, bringing up kind of a Christian perspective of this, when they say that, you pass away and your soul goes to heaven, and all of that. Remember, all of the things that ailed you in life or whatever, all of the issues you had, maybe, whatever sickness you had or crippling problems you may have had, that doesn't exist in heaven, right? You're in your perfect form. Your soul is in its perfect form. It's not really a representation of the meat suit that you've been piloting around in this realm. You're in a different form up in heaven, right? So I kind of think of that at the same way, where, you know, if I'm dreaming and I'm walking around and I'm doing all of this stuff and I've never experienced that, maybe that's just my soul or my consciousness in its pure form, you know, in that dream state. So I don't know.
Hold on, Kev, right? I'm going to throw this to you, Kev. I'm going to throw this in here because Scott mentioned Matrix, and I remember watching a video recently, and Matrix and womb, they're one and the same. And I've just dug up the actual meaning here of Matrix, and I think it's worth just taking a minute just to go over the actual full definition of this. Matrix. At an archaeological dig, the matrix is the soil surrounding the site. Biologists use the phrase nuclear matrix to refer to the material left behind after DNA is extracted from a cell's nucleus. And a matrix is an environment or structure in which something originates or develops. This matrix, related to the Latin word for mother, originally meant pregnant animal or breeding female, and was later generalized to mean womb. Today, matrix includes any nurturing or supportive setting or substance, usually within the fields of math and the sciences, except in the cinematic trilogy starring Keanu Reeves, of course. Now, matrices, or matrixes, is an acceptable plural form that you can use matrices, blah, blah, blah. But yes, where something originates or develops, we literally all are in the matrix. You're
Yes,
born into the matrix by definition, right? Right, Kev?
Well, to go back a little bit in answering Scotty's about the dreams, I am the same way that when I dream, I am physically fit. And on top of that, I can also see because I am also blind and in a wheelchair. But then when you were talking about it, Kevin, when these people have these brain injuries and all of a sudden they're speaking these different languages, if we look at our own individual entity, we have trillions and trillions of cells. And allegedly, all of these cells have DNA, which is basically the history of its entire existence. So if we are a composition of all of these trillions of cells, and this generative spark, this big bang that occurs through the parents becoming that union, then at what point in that process of us being incubated into the entity that we are, does this consciousness come through what matrix? And this is why I make the joke that I know everything, but I have terrible recall. So if we can tap into that ability to go down to our molecular, cellular level and open up that archive of what they call the great library of the ethos of the dreams, you know, so is this what we're tapping into? Because as you said, as above, so below, metaphorically, literally, where do you find that balance between the positivity, the negativity, and the neutrality? Because like within a magnet, in the center of that magnet, there is nothing yet everything.
Jimmy Jeans.
It's more like a radio. To me, I would say we are a radio sitting in this moment. Past, present, and future are all happening at the same time. And right now we have the inert ability in this reference frame that we're living in. We're tuned into a certain frequency. So our reality exists in the material plane on that frequency. So we naturally come into this plane with the right frequency to be tuned in to the heaven and the earth. So we have the ability as a biological computer. We are the radio operators. We are the DNA strands. We are the vibration unique and only unto ourselves, sending out a signal worldwide. So at any given moment, Scotty, the reality that you're seeing in that dream is just as real as this reality is. So at any given moment, so maybe someday we're having a dream and the dream is really great, and we just decide, man, I don't think I want to come back. What happens if you don't come back? Is it when you go to sleep here, you wake up there? I mean, because I go to places in my dreams sometimes, you guys, that are like, it's the same town. It's like the same place, there's some house, there's some familiarity, but someplace I've never been. And then later on in life, I move to some place and I stand there and I go, wait a minute.
You gotta wonder. You gotta wonder how many instances of people who just, when they say that they quietly pass in their sleep. How many times do you got to wonder, is that, like you just said, hey, maybe I don't want to come back. Maybe they're in a dream and they just decide to stay, and you
hear those. Sorry.
Well, no, go ahead. Let's say they just
hear those
reality, right?
Hold that thought. We will be right back.
Hold that matrix.
Hold that matrix. Although after describing what a matrix is, I don't know if I want to be holding one, to be honest with you.
Only consensual. Hail to the womb, man.
Absolutely,
Hail
man.
to the womb, man.
I would imagine the four of us are womb worshippers.
Excuse me, it's man.
You don't have one, but you're confused. I'll probably get kicked off YouTube saying that, but no, this is going really well so far. 1 hour down. 1 hour to go. There's not even been talk of one monolith. I'm impressed. Very impressed. When we come back, I'll throw in another quick story about the dreaming, and then we'll get back into it. Back wherever we want to take it. In fact, Jimmy, were you not still on it? Or who's next up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm ready. I'm ready to
Jimmy's
go.
ready. Jimmy's ready. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Throw a few more thoughts in on it too.
Yeah, man. I mean, the dream world is like the best world, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Anything possible. So, we could talk about perspective in dreaming too, because that's kind of a
So
trip.
do you reckon maybe, how about when, like you said there, I'm like you, Jimmy, it sounds like we have similar dreams. Usually the same place. It's familiar, but it's not. But then I wonder if that's like is that run of the simulation we've had before, and we're accessing a deep memory in there. Is it literally like we're saying, we're going to other moments, other frequencies, but just out of our kind of vision, our material world here? There's so many ways to explore this. I mean, consciousness, guys. I mean, there's nobody out there. There's nobody out there that can claim they've cracked consciousness.
Let me ask you guys this question, because I have an answer for myself, but I've never asked anybody else about it. I've never, asked another human being. Mostly what affects me for dreams, if something affects me from a dream, it's like a vibration of the dream. It's like whatever it was in the dream, like whatever the feeling was, if it was a really powerful dream, I still feel the residuals of that all day long in my life, in my waking life. You know what I mean? It's like
I totally agree. No, I experience that too, where it's like whatever the vibe of that dream was, whatever that sort of guttural sort of reaction was to the dream, whatever emotional reaction that dream gave to you, it kind of sets you on that vibe for the rest of the day.
I find myself liking the vibe to some of the places that I go in my dreams. So I find myself just before I'm going to sleep thinking of that place, like the places where you and I were talking about, Kev, where you remember this place. Like if there's this really cool place that I go it's a house and it's got a downhill driveway and it's got a lot of oaks.
Mine's is like a biker bar, dude, and it's like near those redwoods.
Nice. Well, hey, I can show you. Maybe it's called. There's a place over there called.
I don't know if it's the redwoods. Something tells me it's Colorado. See, why does that even? It's a bloody dream. Are we even assigning any kind of location to it? Why does that feel right?
There's a bike bar called.
Your brain is rendering something you've never experienced. How is that?
Right. If I was to say it was Nebraska, no, that doesn't. I've never thought it was that. It's either been California or Colorado.
There's
neither place.
Hen Flings is the biker bar right up the street in the mountains, in the Santa Cruz Mountains, in the redwoods.
I'm quite comfortable with the thought that I might have been a biker in a previous go. I like that. I like that.
I like the image. I like the image of Kevin jumping up on the bar with his red platform shoes. And all of a sudden,
never trust a man in red shoes. Never trust a man in red shoes.
I don't think a person in red platform shoes would last too long in that bar unless they were wearing a mini skirt and they were female.
Here we go.
Pee Wee Herman will survive.
Here we go.
How dare you?
Yeah, hey, the Wookiee always dares, and that's because it's hour number 2 already right here on your Freaky Friday on your #1 network, Truth Frequency Radio, where we give you protection from deception, tfrlive.com. Don't forget, coming right up, we've got Don Longbeard and Brent Thomas. They're firing up the portal as we speak. I checked during the break. No, I did really. It's kicking into life, it's spluttering, but it'll be going by the time we finish Freaky Friday. And maybe, if you turn down the lights a bit more, maybe you can get into that lucid state of mind where you're dropping off to sleep, but at the same time, you can still hear what me, Scott, Jimmy, and Kevin are talking about, and maybe we can guide you downwards, down to somewhere real quiet. Scott.
Here's the burning question we all need to know, Kev. Does Don Juan wear long johns?
Oh, now that's a question we might need to write down for the next Friday the 13th Woo Extravaganza.
Yes, indeed.
So Jimmy, before I go back and we'll dip our toe into some of the strange lucid dreams, you've definitely got a lot of interesting stuff to add to this conversation. I know Scott, he wants to take it after you, but consciousness, all of this good stuff, Jimmy, you've got our audience thinking right now. Literally, there's audience people out there. You are on point tonight, bro. Go for it. Where do we go next?
Well, I'm just wondering, we were asking there during the break, about the vibration of dreams and like how you feel in the dream, and does that bleed over into your material existence on this plane that we exist on? And, what did you say, Scott? I mean, I have dreams where if it's stressful or a bad dream that it kind of like bleeds over into my day, and I kind of have this something hanging on me, and it's almost like it's I'm stuck on me from another place. What do you think about that, Scotty? The vibration of these dreams?
No, I totally agree. I mean, I've experienced that as well, right? Where you have a dream and I guess you could consider it a nightmare or something like that, right? Where it's a really bad vibe. It's not a fun time, not a good time, and then you wake up and that vibe and that dream carries over and it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day, and it's kind of hard to shake it, right? But then there's the flip side, right, where you have like a really good dream, something that's really positive and like super good vibes, right? And you wake up and you're like, yeah, you're in a good mood. It sets the tone, like I said, for the rest of the day, and it kind of carries on. So yeah, I mean, it definitely, the dreams having now we're talking about, whatever this other realm is, whatever this.
You think about that as well, Scott. We talk about frequency all the time, and the way you wake up, that initial positive or negative vibe, like Inamoto with his water experiments, something positive, something negative, what an effect it can have on just your immediate environment around you. And that's why you get these dark energy vampires. It's the best term to use. When they walk into a room, all the atmosphere just gets soaked up into a void, man.
Your brain is a giant blob of water and cholesterol, right? And so
in a jar,
which is called your skull. And so any vibe, any sort of frequency is going to resonate through that water, contained within your brain. And so, yeah, you're going to carry that over. And look, man, if you want to just see another example of this dream realm manifesting itself in reality, I mean, you don't have to look any further than the example of, say, these genius level savants or inventors that have these ideas come to them in their dreams, and then they end up making it a reality, right? Tesla dreamed about, had these dreams come to him about all of his technology and all that stuff, and then he managed to manifest that into our reality, right? So we're talking about something that came to him from somewhere else, and now it exists here in our plane of existence, or any of these other people, right? I mean, the list can go on and on, of inventors and these kind of geniuses who said that they had a dream and they woke up and they hurried and wrote down, the equations or the ideas that came to them in a dream. And so I think that's a perfect example of something coming to you in your dream from somewhere else and then manifesting itself into our reality.
Yeah. And I mean, you pierce the veil too. When you don't go into deep sleep, your dreams are, they're not the same. Time seems to warp, where you sleep for a bit and you're starting to fall asleep and you're starting to get there, but you don't quite pierce the veil, and go past that to the point where you're in the dream space. And this is an important part, is the perspective of the dreamer, right? So when I dream, do I dream what it looks like through my eyes? Or am I dreaming where I see myself as though I'm watching a movie? And that's a question I got. What do you guys say to that? Are you seeing yourself through your own eyes, or are you watching a movie?
What do you think, Naysay?
I think that it can flip from the whole spectrum of it, where you can experience both, yet possibly not at the same time. Because there's been times in my dreams where I feel like I am above my shoulder watching me go through the occurrence. But then there's other times where I feel like I'm actually witnessing it through my own eyes. But it would depend on the situation on it. One thing that I used to like doing is when I would try to do or find that state between consciousness and subconsciousness, and I can't remember where I read this, but I would take a ball, usually like a heavier ball, and I would sit in a chair where my hand would be extended past the armrest with that ball in my hand. And I would do deep breathing meditation, or like deep breathing relaxation techniques, and go into the meditation of trying to focus on the challenge. and relax. Because if you get to that point of where all of a sudden you're going to fall asleep, you let go of the ball, you know, and so you.
So I was curious because both of you and Scott, you know, expressed that you have dreams, and Scott, you have dreams where you're not in a chair like that. And so one of the things about lucid dreaming, if you're going to train yourself to be a dreamer, a lucid dreamer, is you need to start recognizing yourself. So when you're dreaming, you purposely want to look at your hand. You purposely want to see your hand. And so
it's like virtual reality, isn't it? It's the first thing you look for in virtual reality is your hand, isn't it?
Wow. Well, that's a brilliant correlation.
Isn't it though? I mean, it's like you see people doing it all the time. They lift their hands up there. Whoa. You know?
So you're becoming self-aware in a virtual reality in the same way that you do when you're dreaming. And so when I'm asking if you're seeing it from your perspective or you're watching a movie, when you're not in the chair, is it that you're watching a movie or that you just see through your eyes and you're walking? Do you ever know your legs are there, Scott? I mean,
that's the thing that blows my mind, is that it's like literally from my perspective, and I'm able to walk and like move my arms and my legs. And it's weird because in the dream it just feels totally natural. Like it doesn't seem foreign to me, even though like you know, my hands are, they're kind of like turned backwards, you know, and all of this stuff, because of my joint condition. I've never been able to like move them, you know, in a natural way or anything like that. But in the dream, it just seems like I naturally know like how to move my thumb and move my individual fingers and like turn my arm and do all of the things naturally that I've never been able to do. And you know, it's weird, you know. It's like how do I know to do all of these things even though I've never actually like done them, you know? Where
remember in the Matrix when Morpheus was explaining to Neo and he's like looking at himself, and then he said, this is the residual identity that you've created, you know, because he no longer was having the physicalness of being awakened of the Matrix. And that is an example that I can give where I've been in that kind of state where all of a sudden I'm looking down at myself and I'm remembering the way I looked at a younger age. But then there's also been times within the dreams when I'm looking down at myself and it's not my physical body. It's like somebody else's.
Yeah, and yeah, it's weird. And I've experienced a couple times, like when Jimmy was talking about the perspective, right? Like there's been a few times where I've had like I'm looking at myself in third person, right? But even then, I'm like fully mobile and healthy and all of that stuff. And so it's just really bizarre. It's really weird. Now, have any of you guys had like, what about the whole reoccurring dream situation? Have any of you guys had like
Jantics? Oh yes, very
dream?
much.
Now, when I was young, I used to have a reoccurring dream that I was in, like, I guess you could call it maybe a castle or a dungeon kind of situation, you know, or it's like you know, like spooky kind of corridors that are, you know, built with like blocks, you know, and all of that stuff, and that I was constantly being chased by a clown that was trying to kill me, you know.
What about this now? Let's say you spend a lot of time, you know, if you had a job and you spent a lot of time there, you'd have dreams and you'd be at work, you know, this and that and going on. What about this? What about when you spend a lot of time inside the gaming world and you become kind of in tune to the way games work. What about the idea of your manifestation of that set that's in the game that you spend so much time running around these hospitals, shooting zombies and stuff or whatever? You know what I'm saying? Do you render those sets in your dreams and then dream that you're in those?
That's a good question you just asked, Jimmy, because I am a hardcore gamer. Right? I've been gaming for a long time. No, whenever you practice stuff like that, especially if you're doing like tournament level stuff, like back in the day when I would play Quake 3, I would do Quake 3 tournaments and stuff like that. I mean, I was pretty damn good at Quake 3. But when you're on that level where you're like practicing hours upon hours, a day, you start dreaming about that. You start rendering those levels in your head, and occasionally I'll have dreams today where I'm in Verdansk in Call of Duty, because that's, I'll be on a big gaming session, about 4 or 5 hours, and then go to bed, and that's the last thing you were doing. But that's also part of when you sleep, you're learning in your sleep as well. Right. And so your mind is also, there's also an element of like your brain actually learning and trying to develop skills that you were doing, when you were awake. Right. And so when you're playing those games, your mind is kind of rerunning through all of that stuff and training muscle memory and all of that for your reaction times and all of that. That's why they say, you need to get plenty of sleep.
It's like machine learning, dude, isn't it? Just like machine learning. All that data from your gaming session gets put through. It recognizes the patterns. It goes deeper on the patterns till it memorizes them more, muscle memory.
And then you wake up and you fire up the game again. And you do even better because your brain filled in the gaps. It figured out the mistakes you made during the from the last time.
Scott, self-corrected, man.
Self-corrected, and that's how you develop skills. And it's not just with video games; it's with any other skill or trade or whatever. The more you do it, you rest. Your brain kind of, fills in the gaps and corrects itself, and you do better when you wake up. But another reoccurring dream that I had, because I don't have the clown one anymore. That was when I was young. That was when I was little. And I don't know what triggered all that. Maybe that had to do with just me watching it at a very young age, and that triggered my whole phobia of clowns.
It was full Transylvania, Count Dracula's house and everything, dude. He hired a clown for the weekend.
I don't know why it was in like a dungeony kind of castle thing that this clown was chasing me around in. I mean, just really, really weird. But the reoccurring dream that even I still have to this day involves storms and tornadoes. And it's always kind of the same situation where I'm like looking either out of the front of my house, like on the porch, or the back where the sliding door is, either the front or the back of my house. And you just see like the ominous skies out on the horizon and just like a giant tornado just like.
Now, do you think this is born from the fact that you are an avid storm kind of follower, chaser online?
Maybe it definitely, I'm sure it stems from the fact.
Is it something that's yet to happen?
That's the scary part. That's the one thing that I've often pondered is, am I seeing something that could occur in the future? Now, the thing is that in the dream, it never hits the house, but it's like very, very close. And I don't know if it's a precog thing, that just that kind of scares me, because that dream is really gnarly. Let's just put it that way. It's a very intense dream. But I don't know. See, my fascination with weather was born out of fear. I was very, very scared of storms and thunder and all of that stuff when I was little. And out of that fear came a fascination to learn about it, because I think the best way to get over your fears is to either experience them or to learn as much about it as possible in order to, break that fear. And so my fear of storms when I was little became a fascination. I ended up researching the subject, getting into tornadoes and all of that kind of thing. And it became my fascination with weather. But still, I mean, it's this reoccurring dream that I still have to this day, and I don't know what it means. And I'm really hoping, like you said, Kev, I'm hoping it's not a precog thing.
No, that would be rather disturbing, right? What we're going to do is I'm going to throw in another story then, and that'll give Jimmy and Kevin time to reset their qubits, to get that coherence, that superposition back where they're both with my story, but also they're in that next plane. They're looking forward. They're thinking deeper, because this is developing into a rather interesting conversation. Wouldn't you agree, James?
I would. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to not only listen to the story, but I am going to also become the story.
Be it one. Yes, Jimmy. And never forget, at the same time as becoming one with the story, remember, there is no story. So beware of mirrors and nightmares. Mirrors, there's something disturbing about mirrors. I know we've talked about this on the show before, where you see that mirror in the mirror effect, and it just goes on for like infinity. It's almost like you feel like you could get trapped in one of these mirrors. I don't know, maybe it's just me, right? But it says, it was a dream within a dream, and started out as me waking up from a pretty bad nightmare. I sat up in my bed and saw something was off in my very dark room. The chair that was usually standing at the far wall of my room was instead right next to my bed. I found this odd and then realized a small porcelain doll was sitting on the chair. This freaked me especially when the doll lifted its head and stared at me with its cold, blank eyes.
Oh!
I immediately realized I was dreaming, or were you? And tried to fly away through my door or my room. As I flew, the room stretched along with me, and then the stretching suddenly stopped, and at the end of my room was a mirror. Inside the mirror, I saw myself, but not my normal self. Instead, I was a rather undead looking. I don't remember exactly what I looked like, but I definitely remember, the decomposition indeed. I saw before my very eyes. I pointed at myself and screamed while the mirror image pointed at me, laughing. Oh my word. Then I woke up and played Skyrim for the rest of the night, terrified to go back to bed. That terrified you still sat in the room and played your game. I love it. I love it. But mirrors. What do we think of mirrors, boys?
Well,
the paranormal portal's coming up, and I think a mirror used in the correct way is a portal in a way.
Definitely.
From what I have researched about mirrors, and if you look at these old mirrors, they were made a specific way, having lead and silver and gold and copper inlaid to them. But not only that, but they would have etchings of iconography, symbolism, sigils, in order to use them in this metaphysical aspect.
Yeah, there's definitely something to the mirror thing. I mean, just in general, you look in a mirror, you're seeing an opposite reflection of yourself, right? That's why you're whatever you're wearing, like if your shirt says something, it's backwards, right? Because it's it's a reflection. That's why, when you use camera software, you have to flip the camera in order to show the correct way that people view you at, right? Because when a person is looking at you, it's not the same perspective as when you're looking at yourself in a mirror, because you're flipped backwards, right?
Same as when you look at a photograph. That's why sometimes it's like, no, not right.
Yeah. So
and upside down.
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The way your brain works. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think, I've always kind of thought, like, when you're looking in a mirror, are you looking at kind of an opposite reflection, it's like a duality kind of thing, right?
And think about that, Scott, right? That light, right? That light hitting that mirror, entering your webcam, your eyeball, been flipped upside down, turned into an electrical signal, passed into your brain with all that bajillion other bits of information that are coming in every second, right? And yet within picosecond, you're able to determine that you are stood in front of a mirror and what's going on. That is tremendous.
Yes, exactly.
And you think about that, though, dude. That's like, wow. And all that just came together in some primordial soup. Pretty cool.
Think about the amount of throughput that is. If you were to convert the amount of information, say you take 1 second of data that your eye processes, what would that convert to in like gigabytes or terabytes or something along that lines? Because I think it is. I mean, look at how huge like a raw photograph is from a high resolution camera that's not, converted to JPEG or something like that, right? Just the raw photograph, it can be in the megs or even hundreds of megs, depending on, if it's 4K or 8K or something like that, right? Your eye is taking in every single photon and processing it. Your brain is processing it. That's an amazing amount of throughput if you think about it.
There we go. That was a nice little think about that, audience. Think about that. Yep. And then, you thrust your brain, same brain, into another situation where, say, and I've had this happen, thankfully obviously not that bad a car crash, but bad enough where the car flipped. And then it was on a forestry road. One of my mates driving. It was craziness. But that thing happens where stuff slows down. So your brain, with all of that stuff going on, like you're into like survival mode, Scott, and somehow your brain's able to slow everything down, man. Slow it all down. And it's like eternity. It's like back to throwing that punch when you're dreaming again. And yeah, it's the same brain, same situation. In fact, there's even more input going in now.
That's another amazing thing. That's a good point that you brought up, Kev. Like in the situation of like fight or flight or survival situation, or when something intense is happening, and then all of a sudden everything seems like it's moving in slow motion, right? I mean, what's going on there? Is that your brain kind of shifting time, or are you?
That's like some Neo in the Matrix type stuff, man. You're slowing the bullets down,
because then you're taking like evasive actions, or you're doing, to prevent yourself from experiencing harm, or even worse, right? And I know mainstream science says, oh, well, that's just your body pumping adrenaline, and but what explains the perception of a slowdown in time like that, where everything seems like it's in slow motion? I don't know if that can just be chalked up to adrenaline. I think that there's something more going on there. And so yeah, I mean, I think that's why you see like people surviving, you know, like miraculous kind of accidents where, you know, they were by all account they should be dead, but they took some kind of evasive maneuver or moved in an inhuman way to kind of dodge the catastrophe that was about to happen to them, you know. I think it has to
So
I think there's something going on.
if you master the dojo of your own mind, you really could be like Neo and slow. You'd be manipulating these things, man. You could do this, you know.
Yeah, but maybe their perception of you is that you're moving super fast, right? But your
Jimmy's sending us through a mirror, look.
Look.
Boy, oh boy. Jimmy's a magician. He just doesn't tell us, man. I think he's a wizard, but he doesn't. He's a non-declared wizard. That would make it two wizards, we know.
He's a bad guy.
Hey, Kev, man, you need to get in here, dude. I've not heard enough of you. We need your we definitely need your higher thoughts on this high consciousness conversation we're having tonight. Dang, boy.
Well, you know, one thing I was going to throw in there, but I want to hear Jimmy too. And Jimmy, hey, loved the show this morning with is it Brian?
Jimmy must be.
Yeah, no, it's Bruce.
Bruce.
Yeah, McDonald Morning. Yeah, no, that dude's story today, you guys. This dude called a show.
Right?
And he gave a story in 30 minutes of this ayahuasca experience with this whole predator. I mean, I just sat there, man, just listening to the guy. I mean, he really pumped. I mean, it was a trip. It'd be perfect for Freaky Friday. I can get you a hold of the guy too, if you guys ever want to talk to him.
It would tie into the whole dream thing, right? Because I don't see any difference between that and like psychedelic experiences and stuff of that nature.
This is the whole thing of opening the mages.
Yeah.
What's coming in? What's going out?
Here we go. I think here we go. Yeah, I've missed it. For once, I've missed it.
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
Ma'am, Wookie, time travelers, interdimensional creepers, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, theys, those, its and maybes. Yes, we're back. Second half of today's Freaky Friday, just. I know, I'm a terrible host. Sometimes I forget to bring us back from the break. It is what it is, Scott. You're used to dealing with me by now, right? But Scotty Lopez, when we hooked up today, 14 minutes to the start of the show, I was busy putting Streamlabs together. We were kind of looking at each other going, well, you know, we'll just shoot from the hip. We don't know where we're going to go. We added a bit of Naysay in. We sprinkled in a bit of Jimmy Jeans. Holy shimoly, dude. We're working our way up through the dimensions here, right?
Yes, indeed. Hey,
Blast
it's
off,
another example of how Freaky Friday can take a completely different turn than what we originally thought we were going to do, and that's the great thing, right? I mean, we don't really do any planning before the show very much. I mean, we kind of roughly have an idea of what we're going to talk about.
Very roughly.
You know, we just kind of throw a few ideas or topics out there, but you know, Naysay, he sent us down the rabbit hole of dreams, right? And you know, with his experience that he had when his paranormal experience kind of kicked everything off. And no, it's good conversation. It's a good topic, and I don't know, man. I just there's so much to it because it ties into consciousness, you know, all of this stuff. You know, we're talking about how in my dreams I can walk and all of that, and what explains all of that. And I think it has to do with the fact that your spirit, your consciousness is separate from the meat suit that you inhabit, right? And like Naysay said, using the kind of the reference from the Matrix movie, right? That when Morpheus told Neo, that's just your brain generating a digital representation of yourself. Like it's the way that your brain kind of sees your form or sees yourself, right? And that's what's being projected or not really projected, I would say, more like manifested within this dream realm that we're in. So yeah, good stuff. Excellent discussion, man. It's wild.
Very deep
Okay. I was considering something earlier today, which is with the advent of the digital camera, and we don't use film anymore. Film has a magical quality to it. There's a way that you use chemicals to, it's an alchemical process to bring the image up from this negative onto a piece of paper. So that's one thing. That is capturing a moment in time, but not necessarily a moment in time you could go back to by seeing the photograph or using technology. I was considering earlier today that in the future, for example, when we're, say, all gone, all our Facebook pages are there. And I think in the future, it'll be possible from a virtual perspective to go to a moment in time when a digital picture was taken and be able to jump into that picture and become the character. So, for example, Scotty, your character on Facebook, in the future, there'll be some gamer dude somewhere who'll be able to jump into the Scotty Lopez Facebook character and go to all your pictures and then be you in the instant in time that was captured digitally. GPS, the moment in time, is marked forever. So you could literally bounce to that moment in time and create a virtual reality around that space.
That's probably going to be possible at some point, right? I mean, we talk about of the data. Oh, go ahead.
You could call the game Cuckoo Cachoo.
No. I insist. I am the walrus, Kevin.
Well, one thing that I wanted to bring up, because we were talking about like precogged, like are we predicting the future? I have had experiences which I call deja vu, yet the deja vu is like I'm remembering, dreaming the moment that I'm experiencing. But because I'm blind, in my deja vu, I see in color. And there has been times when I've experienced deja vu, and then I've asked the individual who's there with me, I'll be like, are you wearing a pair of...
No.
Oh.
Uh-oh. They got him. They got our Naysay, didn't they?
I think so.
They snarfled him. Just been sent a document there. We'll get into that in a moment. I think it'll tie in. But just as you guys were talking there, I went and had a wee kind of dig around. I was looking for quantum consciousness.
What we're talking about. Exactly.
Whoa. Now, Nacy,
Oh,
how long do you think you were away for there? Or do you think you were away at all?
Just right now?
Oh, you dropped out for how long? About half a minute?
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, I'm gonna drop something on you over here. I'm gonna drop a link over here for you that you might be interested in.
Well, before you get to that link, I'm going to get to this bit. I was just going to pull up, right?
No, and you might want to check this out too. This is interesting also.
Well,
might tie into that. So here you go.
How do you know it might tie into something? I've not even told you what I'm talking about yet. See, you're jumping ahead again. See,
I know what you're going to talk about right now.
What am I going to talk about?
What you're going to talk about? I'll tell you. Hold on. How about you're going to talk about?
He's going to scroll up the Skype. See, holographic memory theory. There you go. Something I've never heard of before.
Took words right out of my mouth.
Holonomic consciousness.
Right, and I know that what I sent you will tie into that. Okay. So there you go.
Okay. The holonomic model of memory, advanced by psychologist Carl Pribram, was based on a hologram. Now, many properties of the brain are the same properties that are commonly associated with holograms, and memory is distributed in the brain, and memories do not disappear all of a sudden, but slowly fade away. Excuse me. Holograms are the product of a physical process that preserves the three-dimensional quality of an object. Now, normally lasers are employed to record the diffraction pattern from an object, from which a three-dimensional image of the object can be rebuilt. In Pingram's opinion, a sensory perception is transformed in a brainwave, a pattern of electromagnetical activation that propagates through the brain just like a wavefront in a liquid. Tickly throat. There we go. The crossing of the brain provides the interpretation of the sensory perception in the form of a memory wave, which in turn crosses the brain. Now, the various waves that travel through the brain can interface, and the interface of a memory wave and a perceptual wave generates a structure that resembles a hologram. I'm not going to dive too deeply into it. DNA, it's got a holographic nature to it. Our brain, we're hearing here that we do remember things in 3D, right? It's not like, I mean, it's not still images. I mean, you're there when you go and when you remember something. It's not like just a flat plane.
No. See, and that's the thing. I mean, that goes back to when we were talking about the dreams and stuff. I mean, your mind is literally recreating things in a three-dimensional space, right? It's not like you're looking at a flat 2D slideshow or flashes of images or something like that. It's literally rendering things in a three-dimensional space, just like a hologram. So, or just like a computer would render something in 3 dimensions. So, I mean, that makes perfect sense that, you know, your brain is kind of like operating on the same procedures of a holographic projection or an image of some sort.
Yeah, so you guys remember when we were talking about the organic robotoids? Remember those?
Yes.
Okay, so what they had talked about, what he talked about as far as the robotoids are concerned, was that they would take a magnetic reading of your brain, and they would take a magnetic resonance spectroscopy of your brain, and they would be able to recreate your brain in 3D. And also, you know, from a structural standpoint, as far as your memories and all your everything that makes you in your brain, that they could recreate a 3D model of that and then insert that into the organic robotoid.
So basically, like a digital copy of your brain, essentially, is what you're talking about. It's like scanning your brain.
Exactly. And they can do it now. I mean, obviously, everybody's heard of an MRI, magnetic resonant imaging. So, you know, if your brain is functioning like a hard drive, and you have this magnetic component to all the things that make you, it's an interesting idea that, you know, for example, we talk about how maybe indigenous folk and people have had abilities in the past. Maybe what happened is north became south, and everything that was the magnetic setup of everything was reversed, thereby erasing everything that had any kind of magnetic resonance of, you know, the old system. So that's how our hard drive got erased, right? Because our polarities were reversed. So they erased our hard drives, and now our hard drives have been replaced by, you know, where we are now. And so we have lost those abilities to use our natural frequency, like we were talking about earlier with the radio. I mean, we were all radios on a network connected to each other, living in a, you know, in a world that we can only, you know, speculate about, Scotty. What do you think? What do you think?
So are you making the proclamation that as we enter this convergence, that there is the possibility of a shift occurring to where we just might be able to go back to the moment of when we had the ability of mental telepathy?
It could be. I mean, maybe this is what some of these people were trying to repair, the broken ley lines that connected the power, you know, basically the, you know, power to these sites that had, you know, magical prowess in times of old. You know, the resonant frequency of water is a really big deal, and it's something I think, you know, Kev, especially with the lock up there. It's not, you know, we've talked about the lock before, but what about the resonant? What about the quality and the frequency that comes specifically from that lock water? Maybe the resonant frequency there is so close that it just allows that doorway to open up to the next frequency, you know, the next band in the rainbow that's not visible to our eyes. You know what I'm saying?
Could well be, man. Could well be. Why you find maybe a lot of bodies of water have got woo associated with them. Definitely open to that. Something I want to throw in here that definitely ties in with what we're saying, and it takes us, for once, it takes us away from Speculation Island. We come back to a far more factual part of the world. There is a corner of Speculation Island where they deal in facts. I'm not too happy about it, but hey, I'm diverse and inclusive, so I allow it. And from time to time we go there. A big shout out to Nancy in Canada, because she brought to our attention, and I think we've maybe seen this before. We've maybe talked about it before, but there's a couple of points in here definitely are worth going over again. This is the Department of the Army, approved for release back in 2003, U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command, Fort George G. Meade, Maryland. Now, it's about the gateway process. I'm going to read number one. Yeah. This is deep woo.
Oh man,
deep
yeah.
Woo. So I'll read number one to give people the idea what it's about if they haven't heard it before, and then I'll go down to the Nancy referenced a couple of bits that are really specific to what we're talking about here. So it says, you tasked me to provide an assessment of the gateway experience in terms of its mechanics and ultimate practicality. As I set out to fulfill that tasking, it soon became clear that in order to assess the validity and practicality of the process, I needed to do enough supporting research and analysis to fully understand how and why the process works. Frankly, sir, that proved to be an extremely involved and difficult business. Initially, based on conversations with a physician who took the gateway training with me, I had recourse to the biomedical models developed by Itzan Bentov to obtain information concerning the physical aspects of the process. Then I found it necessary to delve into various sources for information concerning quantum mechanics in order to be able to describe the nature and functioning of human consciousness. I had to be able to construct a scientifically valid and reasonably lucid model of how consciousness functions under the influence of the brain hemisphere synchronization technique employed by Gateway. Once this was done, the next step involved recourse to theoretical physics in order to explain the character of the space-time dimension and the means by which expanded human consciousness transcends it in achieving Gateway's objectives. And finally, I again found it necessary to use physics to bring the whole phenomenon of out-of-body states into the language of physical science, to remove the stigma of its occult connotations and put it in a frame of reference suited to objective assessment. So, thoughts, gentlemen, before I scroll down here?
And you got to remember, people, this is an official Army document. I mean, this is not like some,
this isn't like somebody claiming to be like a secret sauce whistleblower called hashtag,
yeah, I'll say that,
or some crazy name like that. This is like the deal.
This isn't something that, somebody can point to, be like, oh, this is some quack pseudoscience dribble that somebody put out on the internet. No, this was like some actual military research crap going on that was like, whoa, and I always say, if the government, and the military is willing to pump funds and money into something, that means there's probably something to it, or they wouldn't waste their time with it, right? Like, look at the whole remote viewing operation that the CIA had going on for years and years. If remote viewing wasn't a thing and it was just this kind of quack science or pseudoscience or whatever you want to call it, then why was the CIA so invested in it for so many years and funding so much money into it? So anytime we come across papers like this or documents that come out from like the military or declassified, documents and all that stuff, I think it adds that little bit of extra, I would say, validity to it as well. It puts the little cherry on top going, yeah, there really is something to this if they're interested in it,
I am constantly seeing military ships on the way to Speculation Island, and there's been a few of them that have been washed up and abandoned on the shores.
Oh, Kev, that'll be my autonomous drone defense system I've got out there 2 miles off the shores of Speculation Island. We've got our fully magnetic shield that goes up as well. It's a cloaking device. People can sail right by Speculation Island and they wouldn't be any the wiser because of our quantum cloaking that we've got going on.
So to say, what people don't know is we have one of those cloaking domes that go over Speculation Island, and we just kind of disappear. We phase out like the Philadelphia experiment, and they just they float by, just thinking, it's just there's just, we're out here in the ocean, but little did they know they had a close encounter.
And if the worst comes to the worst,
comes
to the worst, Jimmy, I go down the hatch. And there is the wormhole and the flux capacitor. I just have to activate the two of them, and we can actually appear on any other planet we want. We don't have to be confined to this Gaia, our Mother Earth. We can just go through a wormhole, man. So, Jimmy, your thoughts on this, and then when we come back after the break, I'll get into these paragraphs that Nancy's kind of... and I've had a look. They definitely tie in with what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten into this document quite a bit. I've looked at the subsequent documents where there's synopsis of the assessment of this, and the one thing that I was paying particular attention to is the human being being susceptible to the strongest local signal that the brain could be sent from an alpha state to a beta state. Simply by, sending a signal. the brain will react to the strongest signal that's coming in. So that was a particular interest of mine, just on some things that I'm doing. But there's the United States Psychotronics Association, which we've talked about on the Kev Baker Show, and Scotty and I and Kev. We were talking about this. We brought it out a few years ago. No one even realized that it even existed. Yet here they have an intention generator where they send a device. They say they want to send the water to Germany and turn this water into a certain alkaline when it gets there, after it gets there. And they send this intention generator, and they had some people focus their intention on that water and change the alkaline to a certain, setting that had already been, predetermined. So the fact that we can have an intention generator, focused intention, and then have causality on the real plane or on the material plane is a pretty intense place to go. And the gateway, as far as the gateway, what I remember that stuck out to me was their description of saying that there's something that's called the absolute that runs through everything. The absolute exists in of itself, and that from the absolute comes consciousness, and from consciousness comes the mind. So it's not the other way around. It's not that you have a mind and then you get consciousness and then you it's the opposite of that, which is interesting, but who knows? It's called a lot of things. The absolute is called a lot of things in a lot of ways by a lot of people. So it's an interesting topic, and I can't wait to uncover more of it. Kev, I see you're back. You've phased back in from Mars.
We're just waiting to go to the break here. I'm not going to start it before we go to the break. 1 hour to go. And the final segment, we definitely have to touch on the monolith. Maybe the monolith was put here. Maybe they're trying to block the frequency. I think we need to triangulate them. Yeah.
I think that music that you play at the beginning of the show, for the radio listeners, you don't hear it, but for the YouTube audience, you hear that very deep resonance.
Something kind of chilled about that, man.
That deep resonating sound is what emanates from the monolith, Kev, when you approach it.
Myself and Kevin were playing the bagpipes the other night in the show. That was deep and resonating. Yes, we'll be back after the break. 1 hour to go on your Freaky Friday. Don't go anywhere. There we go. Yeah, I remember us talking about this when we done the psychotronics, man, the psychos and their tronics.
Jimmy, what was that device you were talking about calibrating into the something scopy?
The intention generator. Oh, you mean the radioscopy?
Radioscopy.
Yeah, so it's magnetic magnetic resonance, but they use near infrared. It's called near infrared spectroscopy.
Right.
So they use that. They say that it's possible from a technological standpoint to copy your brain via that technology and upload it to the cloud or whatever.
It literally basically scans the matrix of your brain, right? It creates a digital representation, a digital copy of the brain, and then you can upload it somewhere. And then, that goes into what we were talking about with the synths and the robotoids and stuff like that, right? Where they could take that digital copy and then put it in there. But here's the issue. I think that they can do that, but what they can't copy and what they can't pull over is the soul and the consciousness, because the brain is just merely a housing device, right? It's just merely a hard drive, I guess, if you will. I don't even know if you want to say a hard drive. It's something where the soul resides, and where consciousness resides. You can copy that. You can copy where it resides, but you can't copy the actual soul, right? So, but then that gets into the whole topic of, okay, well, if you copy that into a robotoid or a synth or whatever you want to call them, right? Then that thing becomes an empty husk for something to reside in, right? Because so you're not copying the consciousness and you're not copying the soul, but you're providing the vessel in which something can inhabit.
This is like an Anthony Patch one. We're going down this road. I can see sanctuary robots coming into the conversation here in a minute, Kevin.
Oh yeah.
So if they're calcifying our pineal gland, is that preventing us from staying within this consciousness that we've all prescribed to? So it's giving these husks of us to be open to some other entities to come in?
Well, if your brain tunes to the dominant signal, if the dominant signal presents itself, man, is that your voice inside of your head, or is that somebody else? Is that an operator sitting in some trailer in the desert? You know what I'm saying? I mean, are you thinking you're hearing the voice from God? You know, I mean, literally a couple weeks ago, man, I had this whistleblower video of this dude who literally said he worked for one of the lettered agencies and he witnessed personally technology where he could look through Scotty's eyes, through your brain, Scott, look out of your eyes and see what you're seeing. Honestly,
I've heard that.
Well, if he's been doing that, then he's been seeing a lot of Call of Duty. I'm just telling you. He's been seeing a lot of people getting murked out in Verdansk. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I think part of this is
Project Camelot next week, but it sounds it.
Well, I think it's the development of future space travel.
Here we go. There we go. Remember, this time we are back. We are live. Hour number 3 already on Freaky Friday. I can't believe it. And I've got 3 other gentlemen here today, making up the 4 horsemen of the Woo Crew. Forget the apocalypse, the Woo Crew. That's it, man. We've got Scotty Lopez up here riding the shotgun, man. Like the
Woo-apocalypse?
Yeah, it's like the Wild West of the Woo-apocalypse, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We got Nacy.
Speculation Island. It's gaining more members. I think we're starting to populate Speculation Island.
Sitchin's Kitchen has also had a franchise. I've signed a deal so that we can have Sitchin's Kitchen on this world now as well. Yep.
Excellent. Branching out, starting a whole new endeavor.
And listen, everyone can get to Speculation Island because it's in here. You access it through that quantum consciousness that we're talking about today. You can be there in the blink of an eye. You just have to quieten the mind. Just get into that lucid state. And before you know it, you'll be seeing Scotty. Jimmy Jeans will be lying on the hammock. He'll be drinking his cocktail. I'll be out fishing or rolling a big fat bad boy. Yep.
What if we had everybody focusing their intent on making Speculation Island real, right? Like everybody sit there and think about Speculation Island.
Man, I'm there, man. I'm spear fishing and everything. It's awesome, dude.
And then, what if we were to find out a few months, maybe a couple years from now, that they discovered a new island out in the Pacific, Kev?
Oh, I don't even go there.
Google Earth never picked up on this.
Runway,
we don't know
MH370 on the runway.
Maybe there was a shift in sea level or something, but a new patch of land was exposed, and it just happens to.
And on it was a monolith, and it said Speculation Island. Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it? A big carved Wookiee up in the mountain.
I think we can do it, people. I think we can do it if we focus hard enough.
Maybe we. Your mind to Speculation Island, to my mind to your mind. All that nonsense going on.
Let me tell you something. The Epic Journeyman has a house over there on the south side of the island where
He
it's almost
has a house on the south side of the island. They call it the House of Epic.
Dude, I swear he had this whole fire ant infestation
Whoa, man. You don't want the fire ants in there, dude.
I'm not kidding, man. When he says he's living in the jungle on the south side of Speculation Island, Kev, he's not kidding. That's all I gotta say.
A good
And
name for a rock band. Fire ants and alcohol. Cracking name. I don't know where I got that one from.
I like the album title Fire Ants in the Jungle.
I like it, man. The four of us all wearing coconut hats. Don't know why we've got coconut hats on, but we do.
Fire Ants and Alcohol sounds like a really good southern rock band.
Hell yeah.
Doesn't it? It's pretty cool, man. I'm liking it.
I have a lovely bunch of coconuts.
There you go. Kevin's doing the warm-up for them. I don't know why, but anytime I see myself on Speculation Island, 50% of the time I do have some strange coconut-type headwear on. It looks bizarre, but I look happy as hell. So, I don't know. Dave's on it. He says it's fine. It'll all make sense when we get there. So, I don't know what that means.
It's not a coconut bra.
Well, there's one of them. There's a couple of them involved as well, but that's for the late night version. Anywho.
I don't have any man boobs, so I don't need.
Anywho, let's get back to. I was gonna say serious, solid ground, but there's nothing solid about interdimensional conscious journeys that we've been going on today. The neural rabbit holes that have been opening up between this dimension and the next. It looks like Swiss cheese out there right now. If you had a meter that could take like a reading of how thin the veil was, very thin, and that's because we're collapsing it. We're getting our brains all synced up into that quantum state. We're going through the gateway. Yes, the CIA gateway at that. So
The veil is so thin, it's like looking through a piece of cellophane.
Oh, I like it, Scott. I like it.
And Kev Baker is the spectrum analyzer.
Don't blame everything on me. I like how I get like thrown in the middle of it. I don't want to be taken to like spiritual court for being the spiritual instigator. Here we go. Right, dimensions in between. Now that we have postulated the legitimacy of the assertion that the energy forms which compose consciousness can move beyond the time-space dimension, we need to turn our attention to the energy forms which inhabit those dimensions between time, space, and like Jimmy said, the absolute. In so doing, we may better perceive the form that reality assumes when we encounter it in those intermediate dimensions. In this context, Bentov tells us that the causal relationship between events breaks down. Moments become jerky rather than smooth. Space and time become grainy or chunky. Perhaps a piece of space can be traversed by a particle of matter in any direction without necessarily being synchronized with the piece of time. In short, a pair of events will occur in either time or space. The pair are not connected casually, but by a random fluctuation. Now, what Bentov means is that inside the dimension of space-time, where both concepts apply in a generally uniform way, there is a proportional relationship between them. A certain space can be covered by energy moving in either particle or waveform in a certain time, assuming a specific velocity virtually anywhere in the time-space universe. The relationship is neat and predictable. However, in the intermediate dimensions between time and space, the limitations imposed on energy to put it into a state of oscillating motion are not uniform as they are in our physical universe. A myriad of various distortions and incongruities are thus likely to be encountered, such that our nice, neat assumptions concerning the relationship between time and space as we know it in this dimension do not apply. But even more important, access is open to both the past and the future when the dimension of current time-space is left behind. And that goes back to what Jimmy said earlier as well. Past, present, future. So we'll read this one last one here that Nancy had recommended we take a look at. And a big thank you to you all the way in Canada. I bet it's getting really cold there. It's getting cold here. So number 22, special status, out-of-body experience. Here we go, boys. Buckle up. I'm telling you. You don't need bodies where we're going. We're going to the astral plane here, fellas. Although human consciousness can, with enough practice, move beyond the dimension of time, space, and interface with other energy systems and other dimensions, the entire process is appreciably enhanced if that consciousness can be detached in large measure from the physical body before such interface is attempted. Once an individual becomes proficient in the technique of out-of-body movement and then reaches a point where he is able to break out of space-time while out of his body, he gains the advantage of clicking out, part of his enhanced consciousness, while starting from a base located much closer to the dimensions with which he wishes to communicate. It's like you set up a base camp. It's like you get near the front lines where you need to go. You hunker down there, you know, you go to that good place anytime you're getting ready. This is crazy, isn't it? It literally is like conscious, it's spiritual warfare type language, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Big time, big time. So,
it sounds like we need to get the Montauk chair.
Oh, a bit of Montauk. It's been years since I've even got into any of that. Right, well, just this one last bit. This it's not that long to go at all. In other words, since he is starting from a point much higher up, to use an analogy from the space-time context, that part of his consciousness involved in clicking out will have that much more time to interact in dimensions between time and space, because less time is required to traverse the intervening layers. Moreover, once the individual is able to project his consciousness beyond space-time, that consciousness would logically tend to enter or entrain its frequency output with the new energy environment to which it is exposed, therein greatly enhancing the extent to which an individual's altered consciousness may be further modified to achieve a much heightened point of focus and a much refined oscillating pattern. As a result, a self-reinforcing process should ensue whereby a farther consciousness in the out-of-body state can be projected beyond the time-space dimension. The more its level of energy output would be enhanced, thus promoting the potential for still further travel. The tentative conclusion to be drawn is that the out-of-body state may be regarded as an extremely effective way of accelerating the process of enhancing consciousness, and interfacing with dimensions beyond time-space. If the practitioner of the gateway technique has a choice of concentrating on achieving and exploiting the out-of-body experience, as opposed to concentrating on full efforts on expanding his consciousness exclusively from a physical base, the former would appear to promise much faster and more impressive success than does the latter. And you know what this tells me as well, guys? See, once you're in one of these programs, you ain't getting out. Because the more times you do this, the more proficient you become. The more you are entrained to these other frequencies.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like they were saying that the human body, or the brain attunes itself to the most dominant frequency. So, like we were talking about earlier, when you're the radio and you're only tuned to this frequency, this is where you are. You have just like you got the base unit. If you want to go into these other dimensions or levels of the game, you have to learn how to tune those frequencies in, become that spectrum analyzer, and tune in to precisely where and when you want to be. So, for example, lots of people don't know this. I know I didn't know it, so I'll share it with you. I found out that Stanford Research Institute basically discovered the rings of Saturn through remote viewing before they had the ability with telescopes to see it. And that was back in the late 60s, early 70s back then. So, I mean, there is no question whether or not the Gateway document is the principles behind some of the ideas put forward, that they are definitely been weaponized by this time. I mean, for example, couldn't you artificially create this same scenario with an individual? Maybe put an individual in a certain state, Scotty or Kev?
You talk about here's another, just a very simple example of your brain tuning into the dominant frequency. Look at what television has done to everybody, right? Television is the dominant frequency that everybody is tuned into or has been tuned into. Well, now the dominant frequency was probably the internet or your cell phone, right? But either way, look at the way that television, it literally phases your brain into a different state, right? A different wavelength, or a different, it takes you from like alpha to beta or something like that.
Puts you into the theta state.
Yeah, theta state. Yeah. So that's an example of your mind and you're tuning into the dominant frequency. If you're sitting on the couch and you're just watching television, you're going to tune into that and you're going to fall into that theta state, and you're going to just be very susceptible to whatever is being fed to you through the television. So it also applies to people as well. If you surround yourself with people who are negative, right, you're going to end up becoming a negative person. You're going to be in tune. You're going to synchronize up with that, and that's going to be the dominant frequency around you. Whereas if you surround yourself with people with a positive attitude or positive outlook on life, then you're going to end up tuning into that, and that's going to be the dominant frequency, and you're going to end up being a positive person. So it all depends,
Or if you come in, you're a positive person, Kevin. If you come in and you're a positive person and the room's full of negative people, they immediately pounce on your energy and suck it out of you. It's like you come in, it's like a bug light. You come in, those bug lights where the bugs fly into them, Kevin. The energy level is at a certain frequency and makes the bugs fly to it and electrocutes them. It's the same kind of thing. When you walk into a room, your energy level is immediately assessed by all the other beings in the room. And if they're on a negative black hole scenario, they will suck you dry, man, leave you, an empty husk.
Well, I absolutely agree, but I was going to ask Scotty, are you Sirius A or Sirius Theta? Because as we're trying to tune in or fine tune in right now, as I was talking about, with the cycles of the natural occurrence of the Earth and the Sun, we're coming upon the winter solstice. And so when we utilize these rituals or ceremonies to tap into that greater cycle, are we able to fine tune not just our physical body, but our unconscious body to tap into these ethos or those Akashic records, or even into each other to manipulate the fields for positivity?
I think so. Like, look, I think all of this ties in together, right? So, you know, we're going to get into it here in a little while because we haven't touched upon it yet. But this whole grand conjunction thing that's about to be happening with, you know, Jupiter and Saturn and these planetary alignments and all of these celestial events that are about to be taking place. You know, this definitely plays on the whole consciousness thing and all of that, because I mean, do we really understand what kind of energetic factors are happening when these alignments occur, and how are these energy fields that span across the galaxy and the universe as a whole, you know, through our solar system and all of that. How is that playing into everything? You know, and so when we have these celestial events occurring and you have these planetary alignments, then you're talking about a more, I would say, direct path of energy that is flowing between these planets, right? That's not broken up by them being spread out and you know, at different angles or whatever. So when things are aligning up, you're creating a much more efficient conduit, right? It's just like if you're in anybody that knows anything about electronics or whatever, they say to try to run your lines as straight as possible, right? I think Jimmy probably knows this. He's got some background in electronics and all of that. They say you got to run your lines as straight as possible. You don't roll them up and you don't coil them up around and around and around, because it creates interference and it creates a less efficient conduit. So whenever you have these alignments, of the planets and stuff, you're creating a straight line. You're creating a more efficient conduit for energy to flow. And I think that has definitely something to do to play into what we're experiencing here on the planet as a whole, as far as the frequency, consciousness, the vibration of everything, the vibe of everything going on, and all of that stuff. So, yep.
Yeah, 2020 been wackadoodle, I think, definitely. Not all down to the planets and the cycles and the energies, but definitely been influenced by it all. And you mentioned there, Kevin, you know, the whole, can we do work on not just our physical, but almost our quantum, our soul. And that makes me think of something I've spoke to Nancy again about many times, is quantum healing. And I think there's something to this. They call it pseudoscience, of course. Of course, you know, they would do. Not much money to be made out of. They haven't found how to, like, weaponize it and the pharma money the pharma people make their money off it. But it says quantum healing is a pseudoscientific mixture of ideas which purportedly draw on quantum mechanics, psychology, philosophy, and neurophysiology. Now, advocates of quantum healing assert that quantum phenomena govern health and well-being. Now, I would say, as opposed to govern it, I think I would frame it as it can have an influence on it. And if we can influence then our quantum body, our quantum self, then we can have an influence that may result in taking away whatever ailment it is that you're trying to treat in the first place. But it says there are a number of different versions which allude to various quantum ideas, including wave-particle duality and virtual particles, and more generally to energy and vibrations. Now, quantum healing is a form of alternative medicine. Now, I would imagine, guys, that there's a lot of people that probably can claim, or do claim, that they are quantum healers. But like clairvoyance, like anything else, I think there's definitely something to this, but it's having the wherewithal and knowing who to go to. Because this is the kind of thing I would imagine. And again, Scott, I think there's something very, very real at the heart of this, you know. But so open to abuse It's like when you go looking for UFOs and things, there's too much crap to wade through. I mean, how can you tell one good quantum healer from another? That's my point.
No, I'm with you on this. It's one of those things to where there's something to it, and I definitely believe it's grounded in something. It's just I think that there's probably a lot of people out there that claim to be quantum healers and aren't, and then it muddies the water, and then it causes a lot of doubt and
if you think about
speculation.
If our DNA is holographic, our brains were holographic, they've got that aspect to it earlier. Holograms, they contain all of the information in the tiniest bit. So does that mean that the information from when, say, a cell, if it's cancer or something, can you get back to that piece of information where the code was good? Is it still in there? Because if it is, then that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's essentially the premise that I kind of understand of how this works, is that you're essentially like rolling back the clock. It's almost like loading up a restore point on your computer, right? When you set a restore point and then you end up, something ends up going wrong, something gets deleted in your registry and your computer's all messed up. Well, you just go and you click on the restore point that you set, and boom, everything's back to the way it was before, it got messed up. So, we look at DNA. DNA is data. Everything is data, and
our proteins are just data. I mean, they're amino acids strung together, right? Still just data.
Yeah. It's all just data, and if you just treat it as such, then I would say, our bodies do contain, I would say, restore points that we can access and maybe repair some damage that may have occurred, after that point. Just kind of roll it back, and I'm sure there's probably a limit to it. I mean, it's not. It's not like, I'm going to roll you back to when you were like 5 years old or something like that. No. It's just, I'm sure there's some limitations and whatever, but the premise is there, that I think you can roll some of this stuff back to remove some damage that may have occurred. Yeah.
As we get...
When you go, Nacy, I was going to ask you, what do you think of quantum healing? What do you make of that, Nacy?
Well, as we get caught up in these cycles, and when we don't recognize being caught up in that cycle, and the metaphor that I share is that old Arnold Schwarzenegger with Conan the Barbarian, when they take him as a child and they put him on that huge grinding wheel. And as he keeps going around and around and around, he creates this trough. And that same metaphor, if you think of a sphere and you're going around and around that sphere, you find yourself in this cycle to where you embed yourself in a trough. And if that embedment is dis-ease, and you constantly are focused in this dis-ease, then you solidify it down to the quantum of your existence. And so you rewrite your program that says, no, you should be happy and healthy and loving life. Whoa. And coming back for more.
I just had a time slip.
Freaky Friday.
We just lost 10 minutes of Freaky Friday. We'll be right back. I'll explain on the other side. No, we really lost 10 minutes there. Last time I looked at the clock and I'm thinking, right, 17 minutes past playtime. Boom.
I know.
Music.
Same thing with me. I was not anticipating that break to come up.
No.
So fast. It seemed like, that was kind of weird.
That's because I introduced the time portal.
Jimmy does look like he lives in a magician's cupboard, doesn't he?
See, that's what happens when you have a magician.
Dude, look at this. It's a picture of a picture taking a picture of itself, reflecting on itself back in through the internet. This is
oh no, that's it. Mark Zuckerberg's head's about to explode.
I just
Makes me
Dorsey's
Makes me
beard's
think of
falling off
Escher.
right now. Bill Gates is running for the hills. Jimmy, you broke the Matrix, man. Well done.
look at that. That is a trip because I could see you in the reflection. I could see the screen. I could see the chat. Look at that. I'm showing the chat.
Good
Look
stuff,
at we
man.
opened the porthole.
as long as it's not the starboard hole.
I know.
As mad as a box of frogs. As mad as a box of toads, man.
Look at that star. It's Polaris.
Oh, I like it. One
Okay.
segment to go, boys. Can you believe it? That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, man. Literally, we lost time somewhere. We just zoned through the like.
Did we have that effect? Remember we were talking about when time slows down when you need it to? Did we accelerate it? Did the tachyons start going faster than light? Yeah.
Star Trek Insurrection.
Oh, I watched Star Trek Discovery today. Boy, oh boy, do I love that. Talking to Nancy, she only realised there was a new Star Trek out last week, so I hope she's caught up on all of her Discovery. We'll be definitely discussing that. Any sci-fi? You into sci-fi, Scott?
Yeah, I'm a Trekkie fan. I haven't watched the new one lately. I mean, because I'm just
Oh, the effects are. Picard was good as well, man. Picard.
Look, I'm a sucker for nostalgia, and I don't like to
Admit that you like Janeway.
I like to poop. Hey, Janeway was pretty good.
Number
Hey.
7.
Voyager was nice. Voyager was good. I liked Voyager. But no, I'm a big fan of the Next Generation. Hey, and I'll watch some old school Star Trek too. Some
What was Worf's position?
he was like he was like
Come on,
the
Kev, you know this.
I'm just getting ready to bring us back to it.
Worf was the
Commander Worf, something like that.
No idea.
Yeah. He handled like the battle stations and stuff like that.
Tasha Yar. That's the one I was thinking about. The first one.
Battle
The
station.
only one that matters is Scotty.
Battle stations.
Excuse me, it's ma'am.
There we go. We're back. We're live. One segment to go right here. Wow. Before the break, I honestly thought we'd maybe 8 minutes, if we were squeezing it down, but then the music kicked in. And we were talking tonight about how the brain can affect time, and I'm not saying we affected time, but that certainly felt like lost time there, Scott. But that last segment condensed into whoop, and it was good done,
Excuse me, Captain.
Strange.
Yes.
If I may humbly interject, I wanted to bring up the excitement that I have for next week, the 11th, with the Global Connection show.
No. We're going to have to cancel that one next week, Kevin. Yes, I informed Luna last night. Your illustrious co-host here. I am going to be a guest on Arcane Radio next week. So I don't know, you and Scotty and Jimmy, I'm sure you could handle Freaky Friday without me, but I certainly won't be here next week, and I think we're going to have to put our northern and southern meeting of the hemispheres on the week after, if we can make it happen, or we can.
Okay, well, we'll talk about it behind the scenes.
Yes, we will. Yes.
Okay, but if I could humbly ask the chat and everything, I'm going to be starting my winter solstice fast on Sunday, and I have been having a heck of a time trying to calculate the actual winter solstice, which by definition is the shortest day and the longest night. And so if anybody could please while listening to the show, look up their sunrise and sunset and calculate the length of the day and put it in the chat room. I would greatly appreciate it so I can check other people's findings, because it's been very difficult. So thank you for that break-in.
Yeah, no problem. If any of you out there are able to get that information to Naysay, that will definitely help him, to do his fast and all of that stuff. So yeah, I guess we can kind of shift gears a little bit here, maybe, and we'll talk about some of these upcoming celestial events that are occurring. I mean, we kind of touched upon it when we were talking about consciousness and all that stuff and how it may affect everything, but we've got a lot going on this year as far as all that goes. So we have this grand conjunction thing going on where Jupiter and Saturn are going to be aligning, or almost perfectly aligned. I mean, they're going to be so close together in the night sky that your naked eye is not going to really be able to tell the spacing in between them. It's going to look like one gigantic star in the sky, right? And if I remember correctly, this hasn't happened in like 600 years or something like that. Am I correct? I haven't looked too much into it.
It's definitely two of the biggest celestial bodies in our solar system. So it is going to be very interesting to see the causation that could possibly occur with the magnetic flux of the incredible dance all of our planets have together with the sun.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. I mean, the last time this event has happened, I'm kind of interested in figuring out what was going on in history at the time.
What I'm finding really interesting about it is, we are caught within this prison of the Gregorian calendar. This is what's been laid before us as far as time goes. And so they are saying, allegedly on the calendar date of the winter solstice, this huge conversion is going to occur.
The great conversion.
Now, right? And so then if the English language was, and this is speculation, was created specifically as a type of imprisonment in the words, does it have something more to do with it also happening at this pre-described moment of who is super excited about this conversion? Is there these secret societies, these groups, these individuals that have been waiting for this as
it's a great conjunction? I knew it didn't sound right. The conjunction, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There's a conjunction at the function.
Yeah. And Kevin, we were on talking about this earlier on in the week, Kev, and up until then, you hadn't realised just how significant this was because of the degrees apart they are. Now, I was away at the toilet there, and I might have missed it, but have you had any further thoughts on this in between the time of that show and now that you've thought about it?
Oh, absolutely. And it's making me to look a little bit deeper in these celestial alignments, because my ancestors, we talk of the significance of these alignments. So to give an example that I can't remember the specifics of it, but you could hold your hand up into the sky, and as your fingers are spread wide, there are stars that will fit in the gaps of your fingers and your thumb. And this is one way to look at the I guess you could say like in the zodiac, how we have those celestial alignments of all the stars to make up these characters. And the Native Americans did the same thing. And so with these occurrences, are they literally markers in these grand cycles? And then it goes back to that question, who is the most excited about this occurrence? And definitely, are there people that are literally having ceremonies to recognize or praise these events happening?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's definitely a significant celestial event that that people that are into this stuff are paying attention to, right? And it's even longer than I thought. I said 600 years. It's actually like 800 years, right, since this last happened. And it makes you wonder. I threw the question out there, Kev, while you're away. If you were to go back and look at history and what was happening around the last time this occurred, in a historical standpoint, what was going on in history at the time? Was there any big events that occurred, significant historical kind of events?
There is, dude. There will be, only because we know that's how cycles of time work.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they don't like, they're not identical, but there's always like a familiar theme, right? Like there'll be a plague or there'll be war or
like the last time this happened, was that year like an insane year? Like this year was an insane year, right? Where it just seemed like everything was happening all at once. We have all of the stuff going down with the lockdowns and everything around that. You've got the craziness going on in the political sphere. You've got the global unrest. It's not just confined to one thing. It seems like everything is all happening at one point. On any other given time, any other given year, just one of these events, one of these stories would be the main headline for the entire year. But yet we've got like multiple things all occurring at once, and then it's all aligning with these celestial events. You got this Jupiter Saturn thing. Isn't there supposed to be some kind of a solar thing going down as well?
This was a busy year. This was a busy time 800 years ago. There's like a Reddit. Yeah, there's like a Reddit thread here. 1220, the Khmers of Cambodia withdraw from Champa. Rome, we had Frederick II is crowned a new emperor by Pope Hieronymus III. So we had crusades going on at the time. 22nd of November, poetry. Troubadour Obst, entertains, something to do with the emperor again. Let's see if there's any real. Francis of Assisi handed over the governance of the Franciscan order to Brother Peter Catani at the Porzucola.
What if we could flip the narrative, and we can use this knowledge of this future event to say, okay, all of you miraculous perfection of unique individuals, we have this opportunity where around the world we can collectively at this precious moment focus those intentions and flip the narrative from this alleged negativity into positivity, or to put out all the fires in California, or to direct all of this healing energy to each other.
That would be a lot more productive than dividing ourselves more and more every day. The power of our minds coming together. You see these intentional kind of experiments as well. You know, something this has made me think of. Meditations, power of the mind, the Lucis Trust. Yeah, yeah, they're doing their global meditation thing right now. They're triangles. They've been doing webinars over on YouTube. I tried to watch one; it was really bland, but that's all that theosophy and things like that, Jimmy. And they're telling people to come together in threes to connect via the mind. Now, listen, I'm not here to say good or bad, but the Lucis Trust, when you look into the history of that place, well, just saying. And of course, they've got that meditation room at the UN and all that. Connections to Alice Bailey and Blavatsky and rabbit holes and pathways, Jim Bob.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of significance with the astrological and astronomical alignments that are coming up. And I want to point back because let's go back to the greatest hits of the last decade, and one of them was the eclipse that happened over North America. And remember that was a really magic moment. There was workings going on during that eclipse. And so we're coming up here on December 14th, Scott, over here in America, and that is a key date because that is the date that they're going to be making a decision as far as the electors are concerned.
Who cares? Who cares?
I care about that, but what I care about is this eclipse that's coming up right here on December 14th. There's a total solar eclipse on December 14th. I sent you the article over there, Scotty and Kev. If you guys want to grab it.
I agree, and regardless of what you think about what's going on with politics and all of that stuff, we're talking about significant events aligning with celestial events, and what is the reasoning for all of this, and going to the Jupiter Saturn thing, right? I mean, one of those historical events that Kev pulled up showed that there was the crowning of a new emperor of Rome.
Yeah, old Freddie Boy II, man, he was a character.
That's a pretty significant event, I would say, because that doesn't happen very often, and usually those emperors rule throughout their entire lifespan or whatever. So the crowning of an emperor, by the Pope is probably a pretty big deal and significant event that occurred. And now you have all of this political stuff going on here, the quote unquote, if you want to use the analogy, crowning of a new leader.
Can I go to Speculation Planet?
Yeah, go for it.
Please do, and then let me, after you're done, I got something that's really going to hit home, Scotty and Kev.
Okay, so as I have shared about the winter solstice, my assumption, and right now what I'm looking at, it is showing that on the 14th, the new moon, when there's supposed to be this full eclipse occurring, is all synchronizing there. So if you look in the past of what these peoples or these priests of yesteryear would do, these great convergent stuff would occur, and then they say, okay, in the next 7 days, then we announce it to the rest of the commoners, to the sheeple, because the elitists gather, the event, they have their ritual ceremony together prior, and then it's like, okay, now we can share with the goyim. So then if the solstice and the new moon all occur with a eclipse on the 14th, 7 days later, on their pre-programmed Gregorian calendar, 21st of December, so-called winter solstice, then there's this big convergence at that time. Assumptions, speculations, but it makes me ponder.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting to me about this conversation, and I was patiently over here digging and scrying through the Black Mirror, and there's a mural in the North Carolina Bank of America corporate headquarters. And I sent it over to you, Kev. Sent it to you, Scotty. You guys could post it over there. And it has what looks to be a young DJT. And he's standing on a checkerboard floor in front of the pyramid. And in the sky is an eclipse. And on the ground below him, there are men arguing. This looks like an interesting piece, especially with this upcoming, eclipse on a certain day. What do you think about that, Scotty? Do you see it?
Yeah, I see it. That's it's kind of wild, actually. Very interesting. Yeah, you got the eclipse in the sky right there above the pyramid. I wonder what's up with this whole like burning bush thing going on behind him, and this woman in a cube. It's kind of weird. But hey, maybe this goes back to the whole thing we're talking about with like precognition and events that people may know about and have the foresight to know about something that may be occurring in the future. Or maybe we're talking about like what is it, self-fulfilled prophecy or something along that lines as well.
Well, that's interesting too. Didn't the original eclipse happen right at the beginning of his working as the head of the corporation formerly known as the United States of America? So, I mean, didn't the eclipse? I mean, isn't this maybe I don't remember, but it's for some reason it seems like it was. There was.
Yeah. When was that last eclipse? Was it like 4 years ago? It does seem like it was around 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. But yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. Just interesting woo to kind of note.
Yeah, I mean, this mural is another one of these, like the Denver airport mural, some people say that that's sort of prophetic in its design. Kind of looks like a tale of the history of what happened to the human race when all those people that were born underground finally come back out into the world again and breathe the fresh air, Scotty. They're not in those deep bunkers.
The strangest thing that I learned about that solar eclipse is that they released balloons that had bacteria and different stuff of that nature in them, and they were doing some kind of testing with bacteria.
Yeah, I think I remember something like that they were loading these balloons with bacteria and stuff, and then setting them off, releasing them up into the atmosphere or something to like see what would happen or something like that.
Well, if you think about the electromagnetic fields that are occurring, so as the day progresses, we get bombarded with all of these direct radioactive waves from the sun, and then all of a sudden the moon comes in and it occults the sun, causing the disruption of that electromagnetic bombardment. And then it occurs for a certain period of time, and then bam, we're nailed with it again.
It's kind of like a reboot, Scotty. It's kind of like turning everything off and turning it back on with the new software.
I mean, literally. I mean, if you think about it, what is the ultimate? What is the ultimate shade umbrella? Well, the moon, right? I mean, if you get the moon moving in front of the sun, that's a lot of mass for particles and photons and all of that to try and go through. And yeah, it literally blocks out pretty much, I would say, most of everything coming.
Umbrella. Umbrella, that corporation, Umbrella Corporation.
Oh yeah.
And what did they start?
We're almost out of time, boys. We're
Resident
almost
Evil.
there. We're almost done. Can you believe it? 3 hours gone through the memory hole.
Wow.
No, I believe it.
But while we still have a few more minutes, maybe we should talk about the monoliths. So what we had a third one that popped up in California. The first one was taken down by what a guy called Shady Andy, something like that.
Yeah,
Sketchy Andy.
Yeah, Sketchy Andy, wasn't it? You said his name was?
Yeah, Sketchy Andy dismantled the first monolith. We had the second one pop
is there
up.
Not a fourth one yet, no?
Jimmy, can you explain your whereabouts in California?
I'm in the Santa Cruz Mountains, just outside of San Francisco, about 60 minutes from San Francisco, by the coast, near the ocean, but in the mountains. So I could be at the ocean.
Specifically a few hours before the occurrence of this third manifestation. Did you build this, Jimmy? That's what I'm asking.
Jimmy, you're not in the business of putting up monoliths over there in California. It's just
my monoliths wouldn't actually exist on the material plane. They'd be invisible to the human eye. Only visible to the third eye, my man.
Or the sarcophagi.
Sarcophagi. And I'm about to have a pole shift here in about 5 minutes, so I need to head. See a man about a horse, if you get my drift.
Nice. I like it. Yeah.
Nice.
Can't get in the way of a man getting his horse.
I know. A man, a man and his steed, can gallop through time with Kev Baker on Freaky Friday and Monday through Friday right here on True Frequency Radio.
Been one of those shows, man, it's just totally caught up with me right at the end. Bam. All that adrenaline just comes.
I know.
Oh.
You got to sleep for like 12 hours now. You're just an empty husk.
Day off tomorrow. Day of relaxation. I am deep into, you'll like this, Jimmy, the Cambridge Analytica book. Oh my goodness. I can't look at the internet the same again.
I know. Well, I got to do my show in 4 hours, so I'm gonna head out. And I really appreciate you guys having me here into the microcosm with Jimmy Gene Strike Zone on YouTube, and I'm on Revolution Radio at 11 o'clock.
Why don't you promote yourself, Jimmy, before you go? I'm not laughing with you, dude.
Did you say into the microcosm with Jimmy Gene Strike Force?
Yeah, Strike Zone. No,
Strike Zone. I'm sorry.
There's a lot of friends that enjoy the Kev Baker show. Also, they're up when I do my show because over in Australia, it's a good time for
You're gonna have to watch, man. I'm gonna be starting a late night thing, reading ghost stories for an hour a night, I think.
Hey, man, let me know. I got plenty of candles here. I even got an old Gwyneth Paltrow nub that's left over from last year.
Well, you burning some Gwyneth, are you?
Well, I burned it down to a nub. There's nothing left but the memory of old Gwyneth Paltrow, man. But
just the tip left, James. Just the tip.
I need your nubbin.
I'm
like
telling you. On that note, we are out of here, ladies and gentlemen. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Stay tuned for Brent Thomas. There we go. And all of you YouTube people as well. What a blast. Jimmy, Kevin, Scott. Hope you all enjoyed it out there. I'm going to shove on the music for a minute and then we're out of here. Remember, folks, keep it real and keep your mind open. Keep looking for the woo, but not to the point where your brain turns to black goo. There it is. That's what your brain will end up looking like, folks. That's the goo. You don't want your brain looking like that. There ain't no quantum effects happening in there.
Friday.
Wow, wow, wow.
The Woo Crew.
Wow, 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 wow.
What are you gonna do when you want the Woo Crew?
Call it the goo. The black goo.
The black glue.